Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh boy. Hi. How you doing? And sorry for having disappeared on you for a bit. Technical issues. It should not surprise anyone who's listened to this program for a decade or so. And it was particularly galling not to get on yesterday just because it was the day after the Fetterman-Oz debate. And I know that there is little else that a lot of us have been talking about while wringing our hands. Good morning, by the way. It's, what is it? It's October something or other. 27. Oh, God, of course, it's October 27. We'll get to that in a second. Oh, God. You know, we're living in a time that is so fraught that someone like me, given an hour to bring up topics of interest, I suspect, to us all, doesn't even know where to start. And deciding that this story is bigger than that story is invariably wrong, because all of them are so extremely important. October 27th, the reason I halted is because it's the 4th anniversary of the massacre of 11 wonderful human beings who were praying in their synagogue a few blocks from my house. And since then, in those ensuing 4 years, rather than seeing what caused that horror to be dealt with, looked at, perhaps ameliorated in some way, quite the opposite has happened. So that in the ensuing 4 years since October 28th, 27th, there's been a startling rise in anti-Semitism in this country, to the point now where it is being discussed in a mainstream way that I have never seen in my lifetime. And guys, I'm 3/4 of a century old. But where was I? Oh, I was at the Fetterman-Oz debate. Normally, a debate between two senatorial candidates would not garner a whole lot of attention outside of the state. This is, of course, garnering quite a bit of attention because the Senate of the United States is pretty much split, as is the country. And the Democrats are desperately trying to hang on to a measure of control of that body in the election, which is just a week and a half away. And this is one of the most consequential races simply because this is where a Republican, Pat Toomey, had held the seat, and it is an opportunity for the Democrats to pick up a seat. But of course, you know all that. I just want to say that watching that debate was as difficult as anything I've ever been. I wasn't forced to watch, but I ever felt I had to watch. My sewer had backed up a few hours earlier, and a guy, a wonderful person who does that revolting job had come to my house to help get things under control. And so there was a shit show literally going on in my basement, and there was a shit show going on one floor up on my television. And I was actually grateful for the shit show in the basement, because every once in a while I was able to go down there and say, so how's it going? Because the shit show upstairs is really freaking me out. Anyway. Gail Collins in today's New York Times, I think, had it right. She said this about Oz: the former television talk show star was more articulate than the guy who had a stroke. Big shock. It is also noted, and this in the Atlantic by John Hendrickson, that the debate, this particular debate, was in some ways a Rorschach test of comfort with disability. The fact is that we are uncomfortable with disability. And our society stigmatizes disability and verbal disfluency. Hendrickson says, here we are, we're a culture of sound bites. And to speak in any way that deviates from the norm is to summon ridicule and judgment. Now, I want to say that while I agree with that, it's interesting to me that the incredible inability of the former president, Donald J., to put a coherent sentence together, to go ping-ponging from one thought to another with non sequiturs in between, somehow that was okay. And he didn't have the excuse of recovering from a major stroke. At any rate, it was the longest hour I can remember in a long time. And I cannot believe that anyone would think it was helpful to the Fetterman campaign. I had said heading into this debate that he was a lousy debater before he had a stroke, because anybody who saw the primary debate with him and Connor Lamb and Malcolm Kenyatta, anybody would have, who's fair, would have agreed that he came in third. He's not particularly articulate or quick on his feet. Well, now give him a stroke. Give him a stroke that leaves him with aphasia. I happened to be with a woman last night who does research. Her whole professional career is on aphasia, exactly what Fetterman is struggling with. And it takes time to get the brain rewired. Doesn't mean his brain doesn't work. It's some of the wires have gone. Takes some time. But Gail Collins is correct in that if you look at that hour, the biggest faux pas of the hour for either candidate was actually from the erudite greaseball Dr. Oz. In his response to the abortion question, saying that, of course, you know this, that abortion should be a question dealt with between a woman, her doctor, and local political leaders. That's hard to top. And he didn't have a stroke. But let's be clear. What this election is about is party. You vote for everybody with a D after their name, because the people with R's after their name are now a party of fascists. It's as simple as that. There is no excuse for voting for a Republican now, since the party bears no resemblance to a conservative party. It is a radical party. It is a fascist party. It is a racist party. It is a white nationalist, Christian nationalism party. It is an anti-Semitic party. It is anti-immigrant, anti-gay, anti-trans, you name it, anything but white, Christian, heterosexual male. It is an anti-woman party. All you gotta know in an election now is you do not ever vote for a Republican at any level. And it's a shame it has come to that. But when one of the only two major parties a country has goes off the rails into the weeds and into such extraordinarily anti-democratic territory, there is no other response from a concerned citizen than to deny any member of that party their vote. I'm sorry, I just remembered something. I didn't think it was funny at the time, but for some reason, in the dark mood I'm in, it seemed funny to me now as it flitted across my brain pan. Do you remember how Fetterman started the debate? He said, "Good night." He said, "Good night." I thought, what? Oh, no, good night. He said, it was so apt. It was, we all should have left right there. Right. Good night. Thank you. We're out of here. He said, good night. He meant to say good evening, but, you know, they have different connotations. Oh, why am I laugh till it hurts. Good night. Okay. So, I'm sorry, just getting my thoughts together here. A few more things about October 27th. I can't believe it's 4 years. Somehow it, you know what? It seems longer. Usually when you say, I can't believe it's 4 years, you mean it seems like it was yesterday. But for some reason, it seems longer ago to me. And maybe it's because it seems like so much has happened since. I was at a Planned Parenthood event last night, and when I got home, I was exhausted, and because I've been speaking with a lot of people about all of this, and my heart was heavy, and I turned on the TV, and damn, I'd forgotten. It happened to be on HBO, and there it was, just beginning. The documentary that HBO, I guess, premiered last night about Tree of Life. And I don't know if you saw it. It's on again tonight. Obviously, it's available to you if you have HBO at any time. I definitely recommend it. I didn't get to the end because it got to the point for me that I literally couldn't take it. But I'm going to go back and finish it probably tonight. And I don't want that to dissuade you. In some respects, I guess it was harder for me because I know so many of the people in it. Or I knew them. And all the physical aspects. It's the first time I'd seen inside that synagogue. Since that day, a synagogue that I have been in many times. And I just found it so, it is really something, what I saw. They really put it together. What occurred, it was very quick. What occurred, the police response, extremely quick and brave. Those police and paramedics were in there while the shooter was active. They went in, as opposed to other people, like in Uvalde, Texas. Anyway, I do recommend it, if only to remind ourselves of what the kind of hate that Republicans peddle can lead to. And since then, of course, there's only been more of it. Incredibly more of it. Just in 2 years ago, 2020, the FBI, compiles these figures. In 2020, so this would be 2 years after Tree of Life, the FBI said that hate crimes, religiously motivated hate crimes, were up, and that more than half of them, in fact, 55% of all religiously motivated hate crimes, were aimed at Jews. So what Bowers did here 4 years ago has only continued to roil. And you now have mainstream figures speaking right out, clearly, about the Jews. This is what's different in my lifetime. didn't used to be that you could do that in polite company. You didn't say it. It wasn't something you could say. Well, that's changed. I have one of the great Republican Party's stellar leaders, and she stands to become extremely more powerful when they take the House, if and when they take the House soon. Marjorie Taylor Greene is who I speak of. Her dear friend, a guy named Nick Fuentes, said this the other day. It's no longer anti-Semitic to hate Jews because they don't serve Jesus Christ and they need to get the fuck out of America. All right. Now, there was a time when you could say, man, that guy is crazy, stark raving nuts. Wow. He's pals with a woman who is pals with a guy who will probably be replacing Nancy Pelosi in the new year. The Republican Party is saturated with these kind of haters. And given the number of lunatics that follow these haters, all you need, as you know, is just one here, one there, like a Bowers sitting, where was he, in Bethel Park? One. To decide he's got to do something about it. And because guns are available, they come in your breakfast cereal, I think. No problem. So, right before the show started, I came across something, and I'm loath to repeat it, but again, we need to know what these Nazis are doing, and I'm speaking specifically about one of their major leaders, that'd be Tucker Carlson on Fox. And he was in full rant about John Fetterman. Has been for some time. He really just hates him. He goes berserk. But since the debate, and I just happened to see a clip, Tucker Carlson saying that these Democrats will put up anybody, because it's not about a person's capabilities. It's about the party. It's about power. Again, they're always projecting. It's like Republicans thinking Herschel Walker is a fine person to be in the Senate of the United States. No, it's about who can get elected, right? So he said this. I was scribbling it down. He said that John Fetterman was a mentally defective candidate who can barely speak. And the Democrats expect him to win. But not only that, they expect you to accept that win. So with just a few sentences, Tucker Carlson was saying that John Fetterman is mentally defective and that if he wins, you shouldn't accept it. That was clearly what he was telling his listeners. And they do listen. They do understand. Oh, God. Well, at least you're not the woman in Indonesia that got swallowed whole by a python. Just adding in a little humor. Ha, ha, ha. That's what passes for humor now for me. I don't know. Yeah, can you imagine? There's lots of ways to go. But that is one. I mean, assuming you're still conscious. I don't know. Do they strangle you first? I don't know. Would she have been dead and then swallowed? Or was she swallowed still alive? If she was alive, because you could stay alive as you sleep. Oh my God, it's just too horrific. That poor woman, 54 years old, just out doing a little gardening. Man, jeez. Swallowed whole. Apparently, that is unusual. Yes, it can happen, but that's not usually what happens. Oh God. So, oh, just one other thing. I realize I have a caller. I'll be there in a sec. Hang on. This on the front page of the New York Times today so blew me away. I can't see straight. And why anything blows me away anymore, I don't know. It's a story about something that happened, I guess, in Houston, Texas. And this guy and his wife were getting money out of their ATM, and some other guy robbed them. And so the guy who got robbed, of course, pulled his gun out and started shooting wildly. And he did not hit the guy who robbed him. He hit a 9-year-old girl who was a passenger in a pickup truck that was driving by. A 9-year-old girl dead. And here's what I want to tell you. A grand jury declined to indict the killer of this child for any crime. Declined to indict him of any crime. You know why? Because the law in Texas says you can carry a gun. You don't have to have a permit. You don't have to know how to shoot straight. You don't have to take any test to see if you're mentally stable or whatever. And you can shoot whenever you damn well please. And if you kill a 9-year-old girl, well, that's just tough for her. There was no intent to kill. There was no crime, apparently. Indicted for nothing. And I thought to myself, well, geez, that's Texas. But it turns out that when Alabama's new permitless carry law goes into effect, anybody can have a gun, no permits required. Half of the states in this union will not require a license to carry a gun. And I remind you that half the states in this union are controlled by, right, the Republicans. Incredible. Incredible. All right, caller, if you're still there, go ahead. Well, maybe not then. Okay. Caller, just making sure he's not there, right? Okay. Just say. Oh, let's cheer ourselves up. I got an obituary here. I'm sorry. I'm just rambling around. While I was talking, someone showed up at my front door. She's a friend. She always shows up at my front door while I'm doing my show. God bless her. Only this time she had in her hand a big bouquet of flowers. And I guess those are for me. She's so sweet. She smiled through the window and gone. So I got some nice flowers waiting for me afterwards. And I suspect it's because she put together the Planned Parenthood event last night and I emceed it. That's a sweet thank you gift. Unnecessary? Okay. Let me just make sure. Okay. God damn, my phone keeps going off and it's, it's other people on a, never mind. I hate technology. I love it. I hate it. I love it. I hate it. Louis Gigante. I think I'm pronouncing it right, but then who the hell knows? He's dead. Just telling you. He lived a long life. He was 90 years old. He's a son of Italian immigrants, Salvatore and Yolanda Gigante. And Salvatore and Yolanda never learned English. You see, but yeah. I'm surprised there weren't laws that said if you haven't learned English in 2 weeks, we're throwing you into the ocean. No, we apparently let these people in and whatever. And man, Yolanda, even though she couldn't speak English, she sure as hell could have babies. She had 5, all boys, 5 sons. I think Louis, was the baby. His brothers were Vincent, Mario, Pasquale, and Ralph. What are Ralph in there? Well, anyway. Louis must have made his mom awfully proud because he grew up to be a priest. His other brothers, not so much. His other brothers all grew up to be mobsters, is the word of choice here. Mobsters. And in fact, Vincent, the eldest, was the boss of the Genovese crime family that dominated organized crime in New York City for decades. He was the one who, maybe you'll recall this, who I think tried to show he was too crazy to have done what the feds say he had done. And so he used to wander the streets of the Bronx or Brooklyn, I think, in his bathrobe and slippers, mumbling to himself. But that was all in an attempt to show that he was unfit to stand trial for countless murders and racketeering charges. You got to give him credit. He wandered the streets in his bathrobe, muttering to himself, trying to stay out of jail. It didn't work. It didn't work. So his brother, the priest, Louis, got called in to testify. And man, the priest, what did he do? He said there was no such thing as the mafia. It was an anti-Italian stereotype created by the news media, and said that his older brother, Vincent, was obviously mentally ill. He's wandering the streets in a bathrobe and slippers. Well, it didn't work. Vincent got convicted. He died in prison, maybe in his bathroom and slippers, in 2005. His other brothers all died in prison or were killed in some fashion. So the priest, though, even though he never turned on his mobster brothers, was considered to be this amazing priest who single-handedly revitalized the South Bronx. He carried a baseball bat. The South Bronx was no place you wanted to necessarily be. So he carried a baseball bat. He also himself went to jail for refusing to testify against his brothers. But for almost half a century, Father Louis Gigante was a huge presence. He became an accredited political boss. He won the Democratic leadership of the 77th Assembly District. He handed out patronage. So he was like his brothers, only he was doing it on behest of the Catholic Church and the Democratic Party. Here's a quote from him, 1972. It's an advantage for me to be a priest as well as a district leader. I mean, at first there were those who felt it was wrong for a priest to be a politician. But then when I did a few favors for them, these same people, well, they changed their minds. Patronage is where it is. That's the priest. He won a seat on the New York City Council. He ended up building huge 6,000 affordable low-income housing units. What a character. And all the time he did all the priestly stuff. He served mass. He heard confessions. Man, the confessions he must have heard. And buried the dead, some of whom maybe his brothers had killed. Who knows? But that I thought was that's an interesting life, I would say. Oh, God. So, something happened while we were off the air that just knocked the wind out of me, and you might have heard about it, but where you heard about it, I don't know, since we got a local newspaper strike. Are you aware of that? Yeah. And we got journalists pounding the pavement. And then, as if all of those jobs are not in jeopardy, there was some serious collateral damage in that the beloved editor-in-chief of Pittsburgh City Paper resigned. It was one of those things you don't see very often. It was a resignation because of principle, journalistic principle. And it's a complicated story. I'm hoping one day she'll come on and we can talk about it. But City Paper is owned by another publication called the Butler Eagle. That is a publisher that puts out, never seen it, I'm going to bet it's a rag, puts out a rag that serves Butler County. And it purchased City Paper maybe about, I don't know what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I can't ever keep track. And Lisa, or people on our staff, on City Paper staff, found out that while the printers over at the Post-Gazette were picketing on the pavement and the Post-Gazette was unable to put out a print publication, it went to the Butler Eagle that has its own printing press and said, would you print for us? And it was that made Lisa call her owners, her boss in Butler, and say, hey, we've heard this. We need to know what's up here. Are you doing that? Because this is like a big story. Well, I won't go into what happened after that because I wasn't party to it, but back, forth. And the next thing you know, the owner's screaming at her. And not answering her questions. And she had no choice but to resign because she is a journalist of integrity. She put 25 years into that paper, her heart, her soul, everything. I've never known somebody who works as hard as Lisa Cunningham. Never. Marveled at her. And she had she worked while she was sick as a dog. She had all these illnesses and this is and that, and she was there. Not 8 hours a day. That'd be a vacation. Vacation, never took one. Did she make a lot of money doing this? No. So anyway, all this is to say that I am feeling out of sorts now. She was my biggest champion at the paper. And I just don't know, guys. I mean, I really don't know. So I want you to know I am struggling in my own right. It was one thing to work for Lisa Cunningham, to be allied with her. But absent her, and not to sneeze at the other fine employees there, but absent her, there's no firewall between me and the jerks at the Butler Eagle. I don't know. So I had no idea I was going to say any of that. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. So I don't know where you're getting your news these days. And you know what? I've been reading I guess there are some people who didn't go out on strike, some reporters. I've been reading some of what they're writing. A lot of it is crap. Listen to what one wrote. These are the people who didn't go out on strike. This isn't a story about Biden coming here. Biden was joined by several Democrat politicians. Now, that just leapt out at me. because that's a Republican way of talking. Because there's an adjectival form that's supposed to go in before politicians, and it isn't Democrat. Democrat's a noun. So whoever wrote this has already totally, her head, I think, besides she's being a scab, she's taken over by, Republican speak. Biden was joined by several Democrat politicians. Here are some other things I've noticed in the PG right now, without its professionals, with the people who really do the work on the streets. The headlines have gotten hysterical. Listen to this one. You tell me. Here it is. I wrote it down. First Native American woman marvels at Earth. That was a headline. What the? First Native American woman marvels at Earth? What? I mean, I thought, what? Well, what do you mean the first Native American woman? Was it some kind of a, like a biblical story, only it was a Native American foundational story about the first Native American woman who somehow rose and marveled at the, I couldn't, what this scab headline writer forgot to say? That it was the first Native American woman in space. But since people generally don't read much beyond headlines, headlines are really important. Here's another one from the scabs at the Post-Gazette. Ex-Trump aide jailed for contempt of Congress. You know what that story was about? Steve Bannon. You tell me. Was Steve Bannon jailed? Huh? No, he was not jailed. Ex-Trump aide jailed. Wow. Well, that's the kind of bullshit that happens when the real reporters and editors and headline writers are pounding the pavement. Haven't had a contract in what? It's like 5-6 years. The blocks, meanwhile, that own the paper, I think they're doing pretty good. Pretty good. In their mansions. There was one really good thing I read in the scab edition of the Post-Gazette, though. And it was great because it wasn't written by any of the scabs. It was written by a regular person writing to the editor. So it's a letter to the editor. And the guy who wrote it is named Dean Stevens, or Stevens, I suspect, from Du Bois. Because that's what we say around here. We don't say Du Bois, right? Du Bois. And I was so taken by Dean from Du Bois' letter that I would like to read it to you. Best thing I read in the PG for some time. Of course, I just lost it. Oh, dang it. Oh, dang it. Here it is. I have been a registered Republican for over 4 decades. I have volunteered and served on my county's committee acted as a poll observer, etc. This was all when the GOP stood for less government, less spending, and common sense legislation. Now, however, I find that my GOP has changed from all of that to the party of banning personal freedoms, spending the Social Security funds that I've paid into for decades, and threatening to end those benefits that I have paid for since I was 15 years old. It has become the party of sedition, the party of ending the constitutional separation of church and state, and the party of banning women's and LGBTQ personal rights to the freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. In short, it has become the fascist party of America. 40-year Republican. I will be voting a straight Democratic ticket in the upcoming election. I have always weighed the individual candidates on their qualifications and support for my personal causes. In the upcoming midterms, it is clear that none of the Republican candidates meets even the most basic of these requirements. Rest assured, though, I am retaining my registration as a Republican for two reasons. First, so I can continue to vote against the worst of the fascist candidates in the primaries. And second, because I know that as long as like-minded people do this, it will skew your forecasted numbers at the polls. The GOP, as it currently stands, has no place in American politics. Dean Stevens Du Bois, and I thank you, sir. We need about 10 million more guys like that. Guys like that. Instead of the frightening, bleating sheep that constitute the base of that party. Oh my God. Thank God, at least for the Brits. They gave us just a second or two where we were not the leading laughing stock of the world, right? When it comes to failing democracies. For just a little bit there, turns out parliamentary democracies, they can go kaplooey too. And man, but seeing what's interesting though, Liz Truss, the shortest serving prime minister in Britain's history, came in with this program, economic program, which tanked the pound and screwed up the financial markets, sent the world into a tailspin. I mean, wow. I mean, you would not think that, neophyte prime minister could, in a week or two, do the damage she did. But all she was doing was implementing the kind of trickle-down economic theories that the Republicans have been peddling here for decades. So they're one and the same. I mean, Liz Truss and the Republicans when it comes to the economy. So just as a case in point, I grabbed this and kept it for you. One of the leading pontificators on economic stuff for the Republicans, who I believe, didn't he held a position in Trump's administration? He's also been a pontificator and continues to be. He was on Fox Business, and this was in late September when she had just been given, the go by the king. First time I said that. The Queen, the day before she died, right? The Queen said, "Go, Liz, you're it," and then dropped dead. And, you look at that picture of the two of them, and they're both goners in 6 weeks. One politically and one mortally. But anyway, back to Larry Kudlow. Here's what he said. I love this. Remember, by the way, that Kevin McCarthy, soon to be, God help us, the Speaker of the House, was here in Pittsburgh when he unveiled the Republican Party's so-called economic platform. And they called it the Commitment to America plan. These things always have to have these absurd names. So back to Larry Kudlow. Here's what he said. The new British Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has laid out a terrific supply-side economic growth plan, which looks a lot like the basic thrust of Kevin McCarthy's Commitment to America plan. So there's Kudlow saying, you see what Liz Truss, this is right before she tanked the entire British economy. You see what she's going to do? Man, God, that's exactly what we're going to do. Because fine minds think alike. Oh, God. Okay. Wait, somehow I ended up not on my regular page. There it is. Okay. And I do want to note before the hour gets away from us and it's getting close, how last weekend, you'll recall, was so extraordinarily beautiful. It was why fall is my favorite season. It was beautiful. It was warm. The sun was out. The sky was blue. The leaves were turning. It was just gloriously beautiful. And yet, my weather app said, don't go outside. That's what it said. It said, there's like lethal crap in the air. Now, if I were living in Clairton and the other little bailiwicks around there in the Mon Valley, right near the Clairton Coke Works, well, that warning would have been much more specific and frightening, because the quality of the air for 4 or 5 days, I think, was like, it'll kill you. And the people most vulnerable are the old and the young. Now, what I want to know is, we're still living with this is still allowed because industry gets to put this shit in the air? And, in Beaver County, I wonder if the Beaver, whatever that paper is, the Beaver Rag, is going to be covering this. I'm sure with, very happily. You've heard of that cracker plant? It's about to open up, Shell Oil's cracker plant. Well, apparently that is going to be putting into the air even more of the crap that the Clairton Coke Works does. It was really mind-blowing to look at that beautiful day and to know that even though it looked beautiful, that there was deadly particulate matter. I just want to pick up real fast with some of the emails you've thrown in here. Chris writes, I watched the whole documentary last night on HBO. This is on Tree of Life. It was so beautifully done. Yeah, it was really well done, what I saw. I wish it was on WQED for everyone to get the chance to see it. Luckily, I have HBO, but I feel it should be on PBS for everyone to see. When you watch it again, make sure you stay till the end when they run the credits. Adina Menzel sings a beautiful song that she wrote specifically for it. It just brings tears to your eyes. Oh, God. Well, yeah. Chris writes, I've been saying this for years. You really should be doing a podcast. I know you enjoy getting feedback from callers, but you seriously only get the same 3 callers every time anyway. Well, if you did a podcast, you would have total freedom. Well, I do have that now, to do whatever you want, and you would probably have less technical difficulties. Just my 2 cents. That's from Chris. Yeah, well, the only thing that's kept me from it is I couldn't take calls. But I could, I don't know, guys. I'm too old to be starting over. But, that's not true. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry that we weren't here much this very newsworthy week, but every minute of the day is newsworthy these days. So God knows what awaits us when I see you next, I hope. Who the hell knows? On Monday. So have a good one. And get a gas mask, maybe. I don't know.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.